Well, good morning, guys. Another video coming up. Today we're gonna do something simple. We're gonna put a new clutch in my personal bike, which is a 2004 Harley Davidson Road Glide that I've been working on, unfortunately, for a few years because of my accident. It hasn't been on the road. God willing, this summer it will be. We're gonna be putting a BDL Compensator delete, and that's personal choice. I just like this. And what I have in here right now is a Rivera Pro clutch, and we're gonna put a brand new Rivera Pro clutch in this bike as well. Just the discs and the steels, because after 10 years of abuse, I finally have it a little bit harder to adjust the clutch because the plates are starting to warp. Pretty easy job, so stay tuned and watch. First we're going to do is put an oil can underneath, take the floorboards off, front and rear, and get the oil draining out, and we'll go from there. Remove the floorboard on the front. You need a 3/16 Allen and a 7/16 wrench. Just take the front bolt out, and then in the rear we're going to take the two. There's a 1/2-inch bolt on the back, and there's a 1/2-inch bolt on the front here. Take that out, and then you can remove the floorboard and the mount. Remove the rear floorboard. It helps if you have a 5/16 ball end Allen. Really simple to get it off. You can use a normal Allen as well. And to get the oil out, there's a drain plug right here. You can use, I believe, a 3/16 Allen, or you can just leave it alone. Pull the whole cover off because you got to pull it off anyways. But make sure you got an oil pan to catch all your garbage oil. So now that you've got your outer primary cover off, take your gaskets. I like to use Comedic because it's an MLS style gasket. And then you're going to want to take the compensator nut off, your 9/16 tensioner nut. You want to loosen your clutch adjustment nut and back out your adjuster. Give it a couple turns, and then you can, because we have the Rivera Pro clutch ready, you want to loosen your lock tabs here and loosen these nuts as well to take your pressure plate off. Now to loosen your compensator is an 1.5-inch nut. It's regular thread, so lefty loosey, righty tighty. Your Rivera Pro clutch, these 4 nuts are 11/16. Now I know some of you guys might ask, why the Rivera Pro clutch? You see this is your friction plate. It's over twice the width of a factory plate, so it can handle way more horsepower and doesn't need as much spring pressure as well. So then up at the clutch lever you have less spring pressure, which is nice if you've got a sore hand or whatever. And I also run ATF. You can question me as to why I run ATF. I run ATF, Dodge diesels, all your big trucks, 800 horsepower, whatever, they run ATF in their transfer case, which is basically just a clutch, chain, and a couple gears. And we're not running near that kind of horsepower. And I've always had really good luck with ATF. It's thinner, so in the morning when it's cold, your bike doesn't bang into gear like it will with 2050 or Harley primary oil. And just make sure your clutch is adjusted properly. If we were doing just the clutch friction plates, we wouldn't have to pull the hub off and the basket. The compensator we have loose already. To remove your nut on your clutch, put your bike in gear and maybe have someone hold the brake. And then this nut here is 1 3/16, and it is a right hand thread. So lefty tight, right loose. And when you have both loose and your adjuster, you can pull these off as a unit. So while you have this apart, it's always a good idea, pull this rotor off right now, have a look at your stator, make sure it's still nice copper color. If you got a couple posts that are getting black, it's probably on its way out and it's time to change it. It's cheaper and easier and quicker to do it now than on the side of the highway somewhere in Kananaskis with no cell service. So we get your rotor back on there. Make sure you use the right spacer. I already know which one I'm using. This one is going to be about 3/8 of an inch thick. I'll tell you right now here while we're looking at it. 0. This one is 0.250, so 1/4 inch thick. Spacer is the one I'm using with the VDL Compensator delete kit. This one fits on there nice and tight. Make sure there's no up and down movement because it'll throw stuff out of balance. Now that you have your clutch basket and your dry sprocket back on, you want to take a tool or you want to take a straight edge with a venereal style caliper, and you want to make sure that your chain is running straight. Give you a rough idea, then you can put your nuts on, crank them up, and make sure it's running straight and finish putting the rest together. Then when you're happy with how everything is lined up, you know your chain is running straight and it's not rubbing on your rotor, put your locking tool in, and the book says a couple drops of red Loctite. Personal preference, I like to use a little more than a couple drops. And then your compensating nut is torqued to 165 foot-pounds. And after Harley went away from the tapered clutch nut, it went to 80 foot-pounds. Before, when they had the tapered input shaft into your transmission, it was 60 foot-pounds only, so you don't crack your clutch hub. Make sure you pull your locking tool back out. Some of the older bikes required like a plastic wedge, and I've seen it many times. Guys forget them. Anyways, pull it out. Then you adjust your chain so you have about a 1/4 inch or so adjustment in your chain. So now, very important, before you put your brand new clutch plates in, with the Rivera Pro clutch, your first plate that goes on the basket is the thick one for the steel plates. The next one are going to be your thin plates. Your friction plates are all the same as far as I know. But when you put them in, you don't want to put them in dry. Just like if you're on a date. Dry probably won't work good. I like to have a little tray like this. Someone from A&W gave me. And you can soak them in here overnight or just flip them over one at a time so they soak up oil. And then put your plates in wet. Once you know they're wet, you go steel, friction, and vice versa until they're all in. Before you put your pressure plate on, I like to put a little nickel-based anti-seize on these studs. And then Rivera, they have 3 clutch springs available. Gold for your heavy, and then they have a silver one for your lighter one, and then I don't know what color the middle one is. But on this bike, we're running the gold clutch because sometimes I don't ride very politely and I pull a tent trailer, so then it's nice to not have any slip. Because if you got a clutch slip, it's going to happen at higher speeds and it will reduce your performance and power output. Once you get all 4 nuts on there, don't torque the crap out of them. They don't need to be very tight. I think 7 foot-pounds or so is all they really need. And then when you get them tight, make sure you lock your locking plate tabs into the flat side of your nuts. I know the instructions don't tell you that, but you should lock them in. Now you get your clutch all assembled. It's brand new. The height should be set pretty good. But because it's a wafer or diaphragm style spring, you want to take a straight edge and hold it across here. And it should be touching in the center. And you should have 10 or 20 thou, 10 to 20 thou on the edges to get maximum proper clutch pressure. Now, if you need to add a little curve to your spring, or if you need to flatten it out, if you need to add curve to your spring, here is the nut. If you need to add curve, add a spring to the spring, add a washer on this side of the nut. If you need to flatten it out, put one on this side of the nut. Now that you've got your clutch spring set up properly and your locking tabs locked into place, making sure these are not over torqued. I can't finish my clutch adjustment because I don't have my cable hooked up. So you would make sure that this adjustment on your cable is collapsed, and then you run this center rod in with a 732 Allen, and you need an 11/16 crowfoot wrench to hold it and lock it. But you run this bolt in all the way till it just slightly bottoms out, and then you give it about 3/4 to 1 full turn out. Hold the center and lock the nut in with your crowfoot 11/16. Then you're going to want to take your new gasket, hang it on your pins here, hold it into place, and set your cover on. Run your bolts in loosely by hand. And the torque specs on these little bolts are about 110 or 120 inch-pounds. And you start in the middle and work your way out so that it stays straight. You got your cover torqued on, get your funnel in place. Time to put oil in there, make sure your drain plug's in there. I like to use Ford Type F ATF in my primary. We've talked about this once before, a few times. It's a matter of opinion. Some guys run the same hole oil all the way through in all 3 holes. I don't agree with that. These older bikes are 3/4 of a liter. All right, so you got your oil in there, 3/4 of a liter. You got your clutch adjusted. I don't yet. You put your cover on, put your floorboards back on, and that's the end of putting a new clutch set in your Rivera Pro clutch and your Compensator delete from BDL for 2004 Road Glide. Thanks for watching. Please like my videos. Please join my channel, and we'll keep doing what we're doing. Thanks and have a good day.